It's indeed a great pleasure for us to be here at this panel. I would like to thank the organizers very much, especially having heeded to our call to have the conference on the continent, because I am sure that when you go back to Canada, you will be the richer for having had this conference here, especially from the introductions. I saw that we have such a rich gathering of knowledge, and I want to thank you all very much. And right here, I have a rich panel of women who have worked on issues of sexual violence in conflict and post-conflict situations. It's a good way to start with the women sharing of the work they've done and the women behind the work. I would like to urge all the researchers that are here that while we are, we also appreciate the fact that there needs to be a theory behind all this that is happening. I want us all to remember that there are also lives behind all that is happening. And therefore, when we theorize so much and do very little for the women, those of us who are activists among you feel it. And not just the women, we remember that in Carleton there was also a part about the men also being victims of sexual violence. And therefore, we need to make sure that something will get done at some point. And I welcome this network. At the very end of my panel, the first person is, as she introduced herself, Kudakwashe Kitsike from Zimbabwe, who is a lawyer and a human rights activist, as well as a researcher, working on issues of human rights, democracy, and governance. She has written and published articles on gender-based violence and human rights and traditional and transitional justice. Please join me in welcoming Kudakwashe. Next to her is a sister from the region, Annette Bogo, who is also a lawyer and an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. She is involved in civil society work as well as academic work at the University of Nairobi, Mombasa campus, right? She works with civil society as well, and therefore she'll have a good balance of what is happening in research, in academic life, as well as in civil society. Welcome, Annette. Next to Annette, you clapped for one, so if you don't clap for the others, then they will think that we have not appreciated. Next to Sarah, to Annette is Sarah Kinyanjui, who is also an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and an assistant to counsel at the ICC. Sarah is a law lecturer at the University of Nairobi and currently coordinates the School of Law at the Mombasa campus. Welcome, Sarah. And for our two sisters from Kenya, we want to wish you well during the elections. And last but not least, we have got our sister, Gilbert Manzima, who is from the DRC, and also works in, specifically from the Ituri province, and works on human rights issues and has vast experience, on-the-ground experience, but also experience in her work on sexual violence in conflict situations, as well as women's participation in the management of natural resources. We are dealing with the issue of women, violence, and political transition. when we say that we are actually in post-conflict, or we are in conflict? Or does the conflict ever end for the victims of such violence of the magnitude that we've been talking about? I would like to invite, each one of you has got maximum of 10 minutes, so please go through your presentation as quickly as possible. Kodakwashi, you are first.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you for organizing this really important workshop where we can share our experiences. I'm just going to talk briefly about some of the ways in which women experience violence and insecurity during times of conflict, based from my experiences in Zimbabwe, in working with women who have experienced violence. And this is what they have indicated to us are some of the reasons and ways in which they suffer violence. One of the first issues that they raise is that when there's violence or when there's war, women can't run away because of their domestic responsibilities. Women have children that they need to look after. Women are the caregivers. They're the ones that look after the children, the elderly, the sick. So if the woman runs away, is she running away just by herself? Or she's having to carry the people that she's having to look after? And in most cases, there's no way you can run away with a baby on your back, 2 babies that you're holding, walking with you, and even an elderly parent at home. So that's one of the major reasons why they say they can't run away. Another issue is the physical vulnerability of women. When a group of men descend on a homestead, again, the man is going to run away, but the woman is there, and even while she's there, it's really difficult for her to defend herself against a whole lot of men. So we, as much as we want to push equality, but we have to understand that we do have a physical weakness. There's no way that I'm going to be able to defend myself against a group of men who want to rape me or harm me or my children. The other issue that has been raised is that during times of peace, there is no coordinated efforts between government and civil society to protect women anyway. And here we're talking mostly about domestic violence. And this goes in line with the other issue, that there's lack of implementation of legislation that exists to protect women. So those two issues are then compounded when it's time of transition and also during times of violence. If we can't implement the legislation that we have when we are going through what we call peacetime, now when there's chaos during the transition of violence, how are we going to be able to protect the women? And this goes in line with the fact that there's also no political will to stop violence against women. And to give you an example, in Zimbabwe at the moment, our political parties, after the 2008 very violent election period that we went through, the political parties have signed a code of conduct to say that there will be no violence in the coming election, which is sometime this year, either June, July, but it has to happen before the end of the year. This code of conduct has been signed, but violence is already happening. So what is the point of the code of conduct? The violence may not be as overt as it was in 2008, but it's happening. So women are already starting to suffer. NGOs are beginning to suffer from violence against the government. The other issue is also that perpetrators are taking advantage of women in rural areas where they know that the public eye is not there, especially international media. They know that if they go and attack women who are living in rural areas where, number one, the women don't know where to report what has happened to them. And number two, even if they do report, nothing much is done about it, because the rural women are regarded as, well, these women don't know their rights, they don't know what to do, let's just go and assault them. Then the other issue that we need to talk about is the cultural and religious reasons for women's experiences. Women, as we all know from our different cultural and religious backgrounds, are always violated, whether it's peace times or violent times. And this we need to realize that, again, it's compounded during the periods of violence. Women are also then told, for cultural and religious reasons, don't report, don't talk about it. It's something that just happens, it's part of war, let's not talk about it. And for us in Zimbabwe, this is one thing we have been trying to encourage our women. Yes, it's a terrible experience to talk about, but for other women and for us to do something about it, we need to speak about it. There is such a great importance in speaking about violence that happens to women, and it's also happening to children. So what kind of societies are we trying to raise when we tell our children, if you've been raped, don't say anything, keep quiet? So, and the perpetrators know this and they are abusing this. And then the final issue that I will talk about are the systems that are not working. The medical systems are not working. The judicial systems are not working. The police. Again, to give you a practical example, during the 2008 elections in Zimbabwe, the police were not taking cases of rape. They were asking the women, what happened to you? Once they heard it was rape, the first question was, who raped you? When the answer came that it was from a particular political party, the police then just shut down and said, we're not taking those cases because they're considered political cases. And then there was the issue also that once the woman went to the police and was told she can't get a police report, then she didn't go to the medical facilities, because this is something that hasn't been discussed a lot in Zimbabwe, that you don't have to have a police report for you to seek medical assistance. So a lot of these women went to the police, were turned away, went to the medical facilities, were turned away. What was the next thing they did? They just went home and sat at home. They can't now access the judicial processes because the judicial system wants a police report. So these are just briefly some of the reasons why women are experiencing violence in Zimbabwe, and we need to talk about it. I think for me the most important issue is the lack of political will and the issue that there is no implementation of existing legislation to protect women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Buddha, especially for ensuring that you spoke within that and we can save the little time. That's very important. The culture of silence among women is something that should be of great concern to us. And it goes really way back, and it exists in peacetime, the so-called peacetime, and it exists in conflict situations. How are we going to make sure within the work that we do, especially those of us who are activists, that women speak out more on these issues and they demand for accountability? And this culture of silence and the culture of impunity ends in our communities. I'm going to ask Annette to speak about the work that she's doing at the moment in the area. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity for me to share what I've been doing. Maybe just to, my work is based in a specific area in Kenya called Mombasa, but I think what is happening there draws a lot from what is happening in other areas in Kenya. So when we talk about violence in Kenya, what we have experienced mainly, especially in the coastal area of Kenya, has been electoral violence. So violence that comes up during the general elections. And even right now, as the country is very heated as we approach the general elections, we are having a lot of fear is existing amongst communities, and some communities have feel insecure and feel that there's a need for them to move out from the areas in which they live in. So because our violence in Kenya has been based on political violence, we find our politics are very much centered around ethnic lines, And so even the dynamics of violence have been very ethnicized to a point where even when it comes to women being affected by violence, in the areas that I have conducted my research, you find that some communities were at first initially targeted as victims because of the ethnic origin. So people who are perceived not to be indigenous of that particular area were targeted as victims, were targeted in terms of violence that was perpetrated. And then later on, through state machinery, the state intervened and through the retaliation by the state, even the local or the indigenous people in those areas were also targeted with the violence. And so there was kind of everyone, whether you're from what we call the upcountry communities, whether you're from the coastal communities in Mombasa, all were affected. And what most women were affected in many ways, and women were sexually violated, and also some experienced non-sexualized violence. So non-sexualized violence here just being maybe you had a business in a certain place and your business was burnt down. And so by the effect of that, then we found that these women lost their only source of income. And because of the loss of income, then they're forced to engage maybe in sex work to be able to generate income. So we had both, and this sexualized violence during the 2007 election violence not only affected women but also affected men. So in my research, which I've been currently doing, I was able to meet with one man who was affected by sexual violence, and the same challenges that he went through are the same challenges that the women victims of, or survivors rather, of sexual violence are going through today. And so when you come to, there's a lot of debate even when you look at the Kenyan context as to, do we say that Kenya is in a post-conflict situation or not, or do we say that we are just, are we in transition or not? And I think these questions arise a lot because we as in Kenya, we did not really experience a prolonged period of violence, especially after 2007 general elections. What we had was 2 months of intense violence, and during these 2 months, our state machinery basically remained operational to try and bring back the peace. And so we can say that our transitional process has been quite unique because there was no total collapse of the state machinery or state structures. And even right now, as we are going through our transitional phase, we find that actually most of the people who were in the previous government or regime that kind of caused us to get into the 2007 violence are almost the same players who are there right now in the transitional government. So there was no total change of government when we got into the transition. So we've had a number of, so I would say we are actually in a post-conflict situation because our government has been able to put in place a number of transitional mechanisms, and these transitional mechanisms have been, some have been effective and others have not been so effective in terms of protecting women and addressing women's concerns. So I specifically looked at the Truth Commission as a transitional justice mechanism. And I'll be looking at how women and women survivors of sexual violence as well have been engaging in this Truth Commission in Kenya. And we find that how women and men will define what justice is to them is in different ways. So we find for women, especially women who had faced sexual violence and who are able to share this with me, they found that for them, reparations or compensation was key for them to actually feel that they had experienced justice. So compensation just meaning that they're able to be, to be placed back to where they were before they were violated. And for men, for them, justice was mainly prosecution. So those who actually perpetrated violence should actually be taken through the court process and seem to have to pay for the violence that they had done. So in terms of the platforms, what post-conflict platforms we had, there have been a number of platforms, and for women who have experienced sexual violence, because during the time of the violence, they could not report, they were running away from the conflict, then most of them they would not be able to follow through the normal court process to achieve justice because of lack of evidence and the rigors of our court proceedings. So you find that for them, an extrajudicial mechanism would probably be the best way in which they would be able to be had, get a platform for sharing, and also a safer space within which they can actually share their experiences and also achieve reparations through that system. And so I found that for women who had, and for those who were able to participate in the Truth Commission, being able to take part in the women's hearings, those were specialized hearings by the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission, they were made very friendly women's spaces. So only women were able to engage in these hearings, and in those spaces women were able to share, and this almost acted like a debriefing session for women who had experienced sexual violence. And we find that women felt more open to share about this within the women's only spaces than they would maybe in a forum where you had both men and women together. So I found that these platforms were very good in terms of allowing women who had been violated to experience some kind of healing through the telling of their stories and their experiences to other women who could also understand what they are going through. And through this system, they are also able to cry openly, to sing out their pain, and I think that really served well in terms of the healing process. But we had also a lot of weaknesses even in terms of these institutions, and because we've had one specifically for the True Justice and Reconciliation Commission, there was a lot of controversy around the membership, and so not many donors were able to fund this process, and as you may know, for many African countries, our state is not able to fully support some of these mechanisms. So because there was a limited donor intervention in this, in the Truth Commission, then we found that they could not really do as much as would have been expected for a Truth Commission. Again, in terms of civil society engagement, because of controversy around the membership, who formed part of the membership of the commission, then fewer civil society organizations were willing to engage with the process. And so, with civil society being a very key player in mobilizing community participation, women's participation, then we found that them not engaging with this mechanism, then we had fewer people participating, and more so the direct victims of sexual violence, there were fewer in terms of them participating in the process. So I would say that what we need right now is, because our ethnic tension normally rises during the election period, I think what we need is an inter-ethnic platform where women who have been affected by sexual violence within the areas can be able to come and share, because the experiences are the same no matter which ethnic group you're coming from, no matter which social status you're from, or which if it's sexual violence, you all experience it in the same manner. But for this to actually happen, women need to come out and be able to share this so that they know, so that the efforts can be joint efforts rather than one-sided efforts.
Thank you very much, Annette. Do we say Kenya is in transition? Is it post-conflict? Is the war really end for women? And maybe those are questions that you will have to think through when we are having further discussions. Is the state machinery willing to talk about it? Sometimes the law enforcement agencies are not willing to discuss it. And we've got even bigger issues where even at the ICTR, the Court for Rwanda, and even the ICC will be reluctant to actually deal with issues of sexual violence. So if they can't deal with it at that level, what hope do we have for our lower levels? And we are looking to policymakers, we are looking out to all sorts of both researchers and networkers to increase our work to be able to ensure that something gets done. Because it's no use talking about it if we are not going to get some kind of reparation. At least make sure that the person who did, who committed the offense is put behind bars for a few years. And that is the dilemma that we find ourselves in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We keep wringing our hands, we keep hearing of these horrendous stories and saying, oh dear, oh dear. But when is this oh dear going to end? And when is someone going to finally take responsibility? We'd like to hear from our sister Gilbert from the DRC. Thank you.
Merci. Comme méthodologie, moi j'ai essayé de répondre à toutes les questions ici. Mais comme introduction, je peux vous assurer que dans notre Afrique noire, la violence faite à la femme a existé depuis que la femme est là au monde. La guerre n'est venue qu'aggraver la situation, puisque la femme était considérée comme l'arme de guerre. Et avec la prolifération des armes, cette habitude est restée. Il y a une semaine, il y a une femme qu'on a tuée en arme à cause de son achat de ristournes. Donc, cette habitude est ancrée maintenant dans les gens. Et la lutte devient difficile. Pourquoi? Puisque nos frères hommes, que ce soit les intellectuels, même les hommes de la loi, n'y croient pas. Quand j'ai dit que je venais ici pour une conférence en rapport avec les violences, toujours vos problèmes là, vraiment, vous nous agacez. On n'a plus autre chose à faire que violence sexuelle. Vous ne pouvez pas aller chercher comment redynamiser les autres activités, comment avoir l'argent, c'est seulement les femmes. Et avec la mauvaise gouvernance, en tout cas je me suis de notre pays, il y a l'impunité, il y a la corruption, il y a une loi réprimant les violences sexuelles qui est la mise sur pied, mais c'est pour les pauvres. Vous n'avez pas l'argent, vous êtes en prison, vous allez vous accroupir en prison, vous avez l'argent, on dénonce aujourd'hui, demain vous êtes dehors, vous allez encore violer d'autres filles. C'est ça qui pose problème chez nous. Surtout nos frères hommes. S'ils pouvaient nous comprendre, puisque demain c'est votre fille qui sera violée. Mais non, en tout cas, même les hommes de la loi, même les responsables de la loi, méprisent cette lutte. Comment y mettre fin? J'ai essayé de répondre la façon dont les femmes souffrent après la guerre. C'est toutes les violences que vous connaissez, physiques, sexuelles, économiques, etc. Et en rapport avec les femmes rurales, ce sont les plus exposées. Comme ces femmes ne vivent que de leurs activités champêtres, ils n'ont pas le moyen d'aller au champ. Donc il y a une diminution de leurs moyens de subsistance. Et chez nous, les hommes disent que c'est à cause de votre accoutrement, votre habillement. Vous portez des petites jupes là, et alors on vous viole. Alors c'est qu'on leur dit, pourquoi est-ce que vous ne violez pas ces filles-là? Vous allez violer des filles qui sont dans les villages, qui vous mettent des robes jusqu'aux chevilles. Ce sont ces filles-là qui sont violées, pas les filles de la ville. Alors ils m'ont répondu que les filles de la ville nous donnent la vie de violer, mais comme ils sont à vie, il n'y a pas moyen, alors nous retournons dans les villages pour violer les filles du village. Et les femmes commerçantes, ce sont à cause de leur argent. Il y en a qui sont pillés en route pour aller chercher leurs marchandises. Et puis, il y en a aussi qui subissent là, les violences domestiques. Lorsque vous avez un peu d'argent, plus que votre mari, imaginez la situation. Et les femmes déplacées, lorsqu'on fuit la guerre, on est démunis, non? Et puis, il y avait un phénomène qu'on appelle sexe contre faveur. Pour avoir un peu de nourriture, il faut donner votre sexe. Parfois, quelqu'un vous dit, en tout cas, j'ai pitié de vous. Est-ce que vous pouvez m'accompagner dans mon char à 10 km, vous aurez quelque chose? Là, il va vous demander le sexe. Et puis, ces victimes-là elles étaient victimes de ségrégation par les autochtones. Vous fouillez d'ici à un autre village, vous êtes méprisés. Et puis, surexploitation de cette femme-là déplacée. À cause d'1 kilo d'haricots, je ne sais pas, il faut cultiver une grande étendue pour avoir ça. Voilà, ces femmes-là sont vraiment des vulnérables. Et la dernière question, c'était les femmes, la violence de la transition politique. On a dit, qui détermine si un pays est en période après conflit? Chez nous, c'est la communauté internationale. Et puis, cette intervention, que feront les bailleurs de fonds? Chez nous, on a dit que cela entraîne l'inadaptation des interventions. Les cibles des interventions mal identifiées, la nature des interventions mal adaptée. Par exemple, chez nous, on ne mange pas les petits pois, mais on vous donne des sacs et des sacs de petits pois, alors qu'il y a l'haricot naturel qui est là à côté. On vous donne la farine noire, rongée par les insectes, alors que la farine de manioc est là dans les marchés. Pourquoi ne pas acheter cette farine-là, ou bien cet haricot-là, pour donner aux déplacés ou bien aux victimes? Je crois qu'en gros, c'est ça. Nous avons difficile à lutter puisque nos frères ne sont pas de notre côté. Et puis, il y a la mauvaise gouvernance. J'ai dit et je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. I would like to appreciate this great panel. They listen, they are very specific in what they are giving us, and we are, right now, I'm sure we are the richer for hearing from them. The economies of conflict. The rural, poor women, what chance do they have? Many times, even when you are trying to get yourself out of the dire poverty, what happens to you as you are carrying around like sums of money trying to carry out some petty trade? Then you get sexually violated, and it's like a punishment. It is a punishment. So, and then the economies of conflict, the donors themselves. What are their motivations for helping us, for bringing us the expired food that we get, when actually within our own countries that kind of fresher food and fresher food that would benefit some other person could be accessed? So all these have an impact on the violence against women as we see it today. And I would like to take this opportunity to request that we get maybe 3 questions, because we've been telling you our stories. Do you have any response? Do you have any questions? Do you have anything to add? I am giving you this opportunity. Don't think that every chair will give it to you. Yes? Yes? Micro, s'il vous plaît. Très bien.
Bon français. It was a great discussion. And my question is, in addition to the findings by the different activists and researchers. I just want their comment on the law, because most of the players in the international justice system or national justice system are lawyers, and the problem I see is they start with the law, they focus on the law, they expect solutions from the law. But what I have also discovered from the findings of my research is that women have their own lived reality and lived law. So even when you talk in terms of reparations, they are looking sometimes for something different from what the law offers. If you talk in terms of the perpetrator is actually threatening you, sometimes they want the person to be resettled somewhere else. Whereas if it's in Rwanda, they don't want to live their nice matoke, healthy food. They would rather settle there instead of going to Zimbabwe where we don't have enough food. But then there's no consultation. What are your needs? What do you want us to, how do you want us to help? Solutions are actually imposed on them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next person, the next question. Any other? Okay, yes, got my sister here, and then I would like to have one man. There's a sister here. Oh, so, okay, then I'll give you the two of you and then one man.
Merci beaucoup. Moi, je félicite vraiment les panélistes qui ont vraiment fait bien cerner le sujet. Par rapport à la première intervenante, elle a souligné les difficultés de mise en œuvre de la loi et le fait que les femmes ont des difficultés pour parler.
I'm sorry, my sister. Just state the question because we are running. I can see I'm being told to end this.
Une première question pour cette première intervenante. Est-ce que chez vous parlez de la loi, les acteurs de justice sont-ils sensibles au genre? Ça, c'est une première question. La deuxième intervenante parle de la commission de vérité. Est-ce que vous avez dit que les acteurs sont toujours au pouvoir? Qu'est-ce que cette commission de vérité a proposé à ces acteurs qui ont été acteurs de violences parce qu'ils étaient au pouvoir et qui y sont encore? Voilà un peu les deux questions, je crois. Merci.
Okay, thank you very much. And one more person here.
Merci. Très rapidement, je voulais poser la question, est-ce que vous plaidez la cause du statut des gens, du non-statut légal des gens de IDP? Nous, on travaille dans les camps de Goma, au Ranga 1, 2, 3, et on nous dit il n'y a pas de statut, on leur donne à manger quand ils peuvent. Donc, est-ce que vous travaillez sur le plaidoyer pour avoir... Je sais que l'Union africaine vient de donner quelque chose de consistant au niveau légal, mais au niveau de l'ONU. Alors ça, c'est la première question. La deuxième question, MONUSCO, même dans l'Est du Congo, même la section gender, quand nous ne savions pas comment faire, quand on utilisait nos voitures personnelles pour transporter les femmes violées, pour les emmener à l'hôpital, à MONUSCO, on a été demandé de l'aide, on nous a, à la section femmes, et on nous disait, on n'a pas le temps, attendez, on est en réunion, Donc ça, c'est un énorme problème aussi, toujours dans le cadre des camps. Donc je crois que vous êtes de l'ONU. Pourquoi ça réagit comme ça? Pourquoi on n'arrive à rien à voir avec dans l'Est du Congo pour le minimum du minimum, c'est-à-dire avoir un intérêt pour ce qui se passe sur les mamans qui sont violées?
Thank you very much. One man. Going. Yes, one man here.
Merci. Je vais évoquer la question de l'étude. Apparemment, on n'a pas beaucoup peut-être que dans d'autres discussions, on va le faire. Ici, chez nous, par exemple, je crois entendre souvent dire que, pour des cas de violence dans le ménage, que lorsqu'une femme est en problème avec son mari, même si elle est battue, la solution la meilleure, ce n'est pas de se plaindre devant la justice, parce que cela risque encore une fois de dissoudre la famille davantage. Que la question peut être gérée à l'intérieur de la famille, comme ça il y a quand même une unité de la famille et reste. Et dans l'intérieur de la femme, il peut avoir des problèmes. Et je vois aussi, lorsque une femme connaît des problèmes dans son ménage, lorsque par exemple il y a question de demander le divorce, et là c'est encore le cas échéant, et vous voyez, ça peut passer des années que dans le couple, il y a des problèmes, mais la justice ne va pas vous dire ok, on accepte le divorce. Et à ce moment-là, même celui qui connaît des problèmes, qui voudrait quand même pouvoir les gérer ailleurs que dans la famille, il est obligé de rester avec celui qui menace. Et je suis aussi de la vie de madame qui dit que les femmes ont souvent des problèmes.
Okay, question, please. Question.
Oui. Je voudrais qu'on puisse faire une analyse. Comment est-ce que la justice traite des questions liées aux violences sexuelles? Parce que chez nous, je vois qu'il y a des mesures contre ceux qui violent les femmes, mais je ne sais pas si vraiment on peut dire que ça suffit, est-ce que ça ne suffit pas. Peut-être ceux qui vont nous donner des exposés, qui nous les pourront dire, analyser par rapport à ça. Parce qu'il y a des mesures, mais il y a toujours des violences. Je ne sais pas comment on peut interpréter ça.
Thank you very much. I can see that I'm not going to make a lot of friends, but I have to be here because I'm sure that will continue within the discussion groups, and it just shows that these issues are pertinent issues and they were good for us to deal with. Doris, do you want us to?
Yeah, no, you can take a few more questions because we're going to change the schedule a bit.
Okay, so
we'll go to corner 2 and then I'll make a brief announcement and then we can go for lunch.
Okay, so don't take any comfort in that because right now I'm going to ask the panelists to answer those questions, and then if we have time, then we can take 2 more questions. Could you quickly start off, and then we'll get everybody to say something.
Okay. I'll just answer the first 2 questions because I think they're the ones that relate to me more. The issue of consultation of women, I think that is a critical issue, and it has not been done. And we need to.
What is it? Is the mic near you?
Yeah. I was saying that the issue of consultation of women is critical, and it's something for us in Zimbabwe we haven't been doing. Civil society is trying to consult women who are victims of sexual violence, but because there isn't the relationship between civil society and government, there hasn't really been that much success, and it's unfortunate because it's only now, 5 years after the violence in 2008, that government actually acknowledged that sexual violence occurred in Zimbabwe during that election period. And as Sarah also said, in Zimbabwe, sexual violence didn't only happen in the election of 2008. It's been going on since our liberation struggle. So the issue of consultation is really important to find out what is it that the victim wants. In one case that we had a woman who was saying, all I want is for them to return what they took, the livestock that they took from me. And yet, for us, we are saying the perpetrators should be prosecuted. So already that's a big difference in what the woman herself wanted and what was being pushed for her. And then with regard to whether the judiciary in Zimbabwe is sensitive to gender-based violence, I would say no. No, they're not. There is definitely a lot more work that needs to be done to sensitize the judiciary. Number one, it's still very male-dominated, so they're seeing the cases from their own perspective. So we need to get more women in the judiciary, and we need to have judges trained in gender-based violence sensitivities. I think that's a critical point that you raised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's now go to Gilbert. For example, what about culturally?
Je peux dire qu'on est avec sa culture. À cause de nos cultures, en tout cas, on a difficile à laisser ces habitudes. Même dans les seins de nos mères, nous avons cette culture-là. Donc, pour nous, en Afrique noire, il faut compter des siècles et des siècles pour abandonner nos cultures. Donc, on a difficile. On a considéré, en Afrique, on considère une femme comme un objet. En tout cas, je m'excuse. Même, je dis même les grands intellectuels de chez nous, en tout cas, ont difficile à se débarrasser de ça. C'est pourquoi on aura encore beaucoup de temps et beaucoup à faire. C'est ça.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I am sure that those of us who are African here, every one of us, there's a saying in our languages that the things that happen in private should not be repeated in public. And somehow it is ingrained in you as you grow up that you don't speak about certain things. And therefore, that is why we have organizations like KUDAS here, and like many of your own in your countries that are encouraging women to speak out. To speak out, because that is the first stage towards healing, and that is the first step towards seeking accountability. Sarah, I'm going to move on. Sarah?
Et puis, ce ne sont pas seulement les hommes, même nous les femmes. Même nous les femmes. Nous avons aussi cette culture, même les femmes intellectuelles. Nous subissons aussi des blocages à cause de nos sœurs femmes. Merci.
Okay, you can see they are no longer listening to me.
I'll respond to the first question, requesting us to comment on the law. My take on this is that the law should be a tool to facilitate justice and not to curtail justice. What has been happening in the past is that we've had legal frameworks that dictate what we do irrespective of whether justice is met or not. But I'm glad to say that there is now a move towards bringing in different aspects that have been ignored by law. For instance, the current, the new constitution, which is no longer so new in Kenya, does provide that the judiciary should, to the extent possible, incorporate or encourage alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, so long as they abide to human rights standards. So that gives a loophole where you're actually saying that let's think beyond the box. What are some of the responses that can actually address the issues, as opposed to what we've known as the pigeonhole responses by law. So I do agree with you that the law in the past has not been very responsive, but it is, at least in Kenya, it is gradually moving towards incorporating this, at least in law. So we are hoping that if we implement the law, we should have more avenues. And it's for activists, for instance, and people taking up cases to be able to bring out suggestions about what can be done.
Okay, thank you. Annette, you have something to add? Very little, please.
I just had something to say about the question on actors and players who are in the...
Annette, please get nearer.
Yeah, the actors and players who are in the previous regime and now are in the post-conflict regime. The striking of the balance has been very difficult to a point where we find that our transitional justice systems have experienced a lot of difficulty because there's been a very little, if any, political will, and also slow implementation of law. So we have, as Sarah just mentioned, we have a new constitution, but implementation also has been difficult. And in terms of the Truth Commission, we've had a lot of difficulties in terms of the release of the report and delays in that, because some of the points who may be mentioned there may still be serving in the current government So I think for us it has been difficult just to strike a balance, and if maybe there was a total change of regime, maybe things would have been fast-tracked in terms of implementation.
I just want to add that mechanisms like the African Union, the United Nations, the ICGLR, the COMESA, and any others are only as strong as our leaders. And we know that our leaders lack the political will to deal with these issues. And that is why we see the UN sending troops to our country to keep the peace when they know very well that there is no peace to keep in the first place. And secondly, they have a mandate. They have a mandate, and much as they are protecting, they are there to protect the civilians. Their actions will not show that they are really protecting civilians. They are actually out to protect themselves. Because when there is a conflict, when the violence flares out, they are the first to leave the place. So who is going to protect the civilians in that situation? And that actually comes from a weak mandate that the UN goes out with. And I have said it and I repeat it. The UN, the African Union, the International Conference on the Great Lakes, COMESA, EAC, all these are only as committed as our leaders are. And if our leaders are not committed at home to ending this sexual violence, don't expect them to be committed elsewhere. 2 more questions, please. I recognize my sister here and my sister over there.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jessica. 2 small things, but I speak in English, in French. Merci pour les présentateurs qui nous ont partagé leurs idées sur les violences et la transition. J'aimerais leur commentaire sur la question de réparation et la question d'amnistie. Si certains mécanismes transitionnels préconisent des mesures d'amnistie, c'est qui est responsable de la réparation? Est-ce que c'est l'auteur? Est-ce que c'est l'État? Parce que les mesures d'amnistie, c'est dans le but de réconciliation des communautés et pour construction de paix. Est-ce qu'ils peuvent nous donner quelques commentaires là-dessus? Parce que nous avons besoin de documenter beaucoup plus ces 2 aspects pour voir comment ils peuvent bénéficier des femmes victimes ou les victimes potentielles. L'autre chose, la petite chose que je voudrais, c'est l'information sur le statut des personnes déplacées. Parce qu'on a oublié la question. C'est juste pour partager avec l'assistance ici et notre collègue qui a posé la question. Au niveau de la conférence, on a un protocole spécifique sur la protection et l'assistance des personnes déplacées et des réfugiés, qui a inspiré même la Convention de Kampala de l'Union africaine. Et certains États membres de la conférence sont en train de domestiquer ce protocole. L'exemple, c'est le Kenya. Ils ont déjà une loi spécifique pour protéger les personnes déplacées. Et la Centrafrique aussi. Donc, le Burundi est en train de confectionner une loi spécifique. Parce que la politique a été déjà initiée par l'OACR. Donc, c'est que dans ce protocole, on définit ce que c'est la personne déplacée, ses droits, c'est comment on va le protéger, les mécanismes de protection, les mécanismes d'assistance une fois retour à la police ou dans d'autres pays. Donc, vous pouvez toujours vous référer à ces personnages au niveau de la conférence.
Okay, now I have to stop because I am being told that we will reach the time that we are. The two more comments. Okay, just to say that even in an idea, even where there is a policy, women are not safe. Because even to get to be registered, I have had instances where women have had to have sex with the man who registers before they get on that list. So sexual violence is there even where there is a policy. Let me take my sister there and then she'll be the last one. And please don't make very long comments.
Merci beaucoup. Ce n'est même pas une question, mais c'est juste du complément. Parce que dans la situation post-conflit, dans la situation de transition politique, il y a d'autres catégories de personnes, par exemple les ex-combattants, mais aussi les rapatriés, qui ont des problèmes liés à la problématique de l'accès à la terre. Donc les femmes qui n'ont pas accès à la terre, alors qu'elles ont eu des bébés, que ce soit dans les conflits armés, que ce soit dans les camps dans les camps où ils étaient. Et cette question est très importante pour être, je dirais, soulevée et traitée. Mais aussi l'autre input que je voulais montrer, c'est la question de la participation de la femme au niveau des structures, je dirais, de justice et aussi de police. L'étude qu'on a faite sur l'intégration du genre dans la réforme de la police nationale et de la justice burundaise ont montré que la faible participation des femmes dans ces structures, donc, je dirais, exacerbe cette ignorance des questions des violences basées sur le genre au niveau de la réponse, que ce soit la réponse au niveau du système judiciaire, au niveau aussi du système de police. Donc les deux aspects, c'est-à-dire la participation des femmes dans ces instances, méritent une attention particulière, mais aussi d'autres aspects du conflit, que ce soit les mobilisés, mais aussi les rapatriés, méritent aussi une attention particulière. Merci.
Okay, thank you very much. That just goes to show us the complication that takes place after conflict.
Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Moi, je voulais seulement essayer de parler des femmes dans les camps militaires, les femmes veuves militaires. On a toujours tendance à exclure, à ne même pas faire allusion, à avoir une attention particulière à ces femmes. C'est comme si elles font partie d'une autre catégorie, elles ne sont pas dans la catégorie des femmes, alors que ce sont des femmes vraiment qui souffrent, et les veuves militaires et les orphelins, les orphelines militaires. Donc, je pense que nous devons essayer un peu de voir comment on peut vraiment essayer un peu d'avoir une attention particulière à ces femmes qui, d'ailleurs, leurs foyers sont fragilisés avec les déplacements parce qu'ils ne sont pas stables, les foyers militaires ne sont pas stables, et ils sont très fragiles, et les femmes ne peuvent pas rentrer dans leur famille lorsque, par exemple, le mari est mort. Vous voyez, lorsque le mari est mort, ces femmes ne peuvent pas rentrer. Et les femmes dans les camps militaires ne sont pas bien encadrées du fait que les maisons des militaires ne sont pas aussi vraiment des maisons qui sont adaptées pour une famille. Vous allez trouver des femmes qui sont violentes, des filles, des enfants militaires sont engrossés, tout ça parce que les maisons vraiment ne sont pas aussi bien construites pour héberger ces familles. Et les femmes qui meurent en cours de route lorsqu'elles doivent suivre leurs maris qui sont au front. Donc tout ça, ce sont les problèmes sur lesquels nous devons réfléchir. Nous avons interviewé, nous avons fait une enquête sur 100 femmes dans un an qui avaient été même chassées, tout simplement parce qu'elles sont veuves. Elles sont veuves et elles ne méritaient plus rester dans la maison parce que là, il fallait maintenant que d'autres militaires occupent la maison parce que ce sont eux qui sont maintenant en exercice.
Thank you all very, very much. These last three were comments. So I'm so glad that I asked my sisters to comment on the panel. So you can see that there are still so many issues that we need to deal with, and this was only the first panel. And I would like to encourage all of us to remain alert, to remain actively seized, because this is a place where not only will we get the theory, but also some practical ways of working on those issues as we go back home. So I'd like to thank you all very much and to ask you to thank the panel out here for initiating a very, very good discussion. Thank you all very much. And now I'd like to hand over to Doris. Thank you.
Okay, because we're running a little bit behind, I'm suggesting a change to the schedule. I'm suggesting that we will move to lunch now, and we will reconvene at 1:30 and move into our working groups at that time. The working groups are small groups on the themes listed on page 2, and then in italics below there are a list of questions. It's a chance for you to have a deeper discussion of some of the themes that you've just raised and some of the excellent questions that you've posed. So the idea for the working group is that you are more specific, that you can talk and exchange ideas and come up with more specific insights and proposals. But I'm going to suggest that we move for lunch, and then at the end of lunch, I'll direct you to where we'll move the groups into different locations so that you can work, and we'll move the schedule down a bit as the day progresses. So lunch is where the coffee break was, but I know there are many questions and there's so much discussion we can have, so it will be very helpful if we all return promptly from lunch so we can get to work on the working groups. Are there any questions? Any questions at this time?
We understand you are not yet in groups. We are not yet in groups.
You're supposed to sign. Okay, this is a good thing.
Oh, we're supposed to sign, yes.
There is these papers for the groups. So if you sign up for which group, which theme you'd like to discuss in more detail, then you can join that group. And it's up to the group the kinds of questions that they pursue. So your hands are not tied. Okay?
And Doris, a rapporteur for each group? You have to select one?
Yes, okay, so the person who's assigned as the chair, your role is very simple, very, very simple. Your job is to make sure that there is somebody in the group, maybe it's you, maybe it's someone else, who will report back to the group, who will take the notes. When you report back, it will be very short. 2 main takeaways from your discussion. So the chair, you appoint the rapporteur, maybe it's you. You also ensure that as the discussion progresses, that somebody will summarize after the speaker the essence of the comments in the other language. So somebody speaks in French, then another person will summarize in English and so on. And we'll ensure there's a person in each group who can move between the 2 languages. Okay, so chair, you appoint the rapporteur, make sure that translation happens. Okay, so I'd like to invite the groups to report back. We don't have a lot of time, but it would be nice to hear from you a very short summary, maybe of what you experienced as the main themes you talked about, and then 2 main points that you want to highlight for the group. They could be questions that you saw coming out of your discussions. They could be directions for future work. They could be areas that you think are relatively unexamined. But short, 2 things. So I am going to invite the group that's closest to hand, which would be Christine and Annette.
Sarah.
Christine and Sarah. So if you would like to come up and put your charts up on the board, you can do that, or you can stay in your seats. It's up to you. Hello everybody. Hope you've had a wonderful time in your groups. We did. And our task was to look at the role of donors and donor preferences. And our chair was Sarah Kanya. We looked at the dynamics. One of the questions was, what are the dynamics you are seeing in this particular area? Members thought that power relations, when it comes to the donor community and their preferences, but also the recipient communities. Who decides? Who has the power to what should be received? Who dictates what should be in the budget? And also we are thinking that the donor community is not naive. They come to the recipient communities with their own agenda. And sometimes there is absence of need assessment. And yet there is a higher level of needs and basics, that is of the recipient community. There is more that could be done, but sometimes there is not enough time to assess the needs of the community. It also occurred to us that the donor community is more interested in reports than the impact, the projects they support. They don't have enough time to concentrate and see, did the donation meet the required needs of the people? Then there was also an understanding that one of the dynamics of the donor community is that they raise the hope of the beneficiaries, promising a lot, and sometimes this is not realized. So a little bit of empty promises, and we can discuss that more. We also understood that interventions are not coordinated well, and so there is need for harmonizing. So, I take an example of Northern Uganda. Going to Northern Uganda in 2008, 2009, found that there was a duplication of projects. All the formerly abducted girls were given sewing machines, for instance. So at the end of the day, you have thousands of girls sewing, and the question is, how many clients do they get, and how can that sustain them? So there is need for coordination. We also looked at the need for the donor community to keep their promises, following the Paris principle of harmonizing intervention. Lack of continuity of projects, because the impact is not realized, these projects sort of get stalled, and therefore there is no change in the community. Some of the donors are interested in making their names and propagating themselves further. And that's not enough, because that's not what the communities are looking out for. They have needs and they expect more. But there was a critical voice in which we realized that beneficiaries are not raising high enough their profile with regard to power relations. And here we were thinking and discussing further that there is a need for the recipient communities, the beneficiaries, to also step up. You cannot be at the same level or lacking the power to negotiate, lacking all the time you're waiting to receive. And that was found to be critical. So there is a need for the beneficiaries to improve on their capacity to negotiate. Limited budget. The donor community tends to dictate, and this of course goes back to the issue of power relations. Another voice was that of donor fatigue. You cannot fuel out over and over. There is a sense of fatigue, and we need to take responsibility over our governance with regard to this.
So those were the dynamics.
Our question here was that what issues, what are some of the barriers preventing further research, action, programming in these areas? I think we would have done a lot of discussion here, but the issue of accountability and transparency was very key to the group. And the issue was especially to find out, if we are thinking of research, where is money allocated? And we thought that here, with regard to accountability, it has to be accountability of money, but also accountability of programs. Can we tell where a certain amount of money really was allocated? Did it do exactly what it was meant to do? And if it did what it was meant to do, can we even locate geographically a given number of people, of beneficiaries, and really point to them that these have surely received what was intended for them? So accountability not only of funds, but also of individuals, but also of the actual programs. There was also need of coordinating funds and research. And the point of discussion here was especially that a lot of risk of funds is given out to research, and then you find a lot of research being done as though for the sake of it, and that was critical. And this meant that we need to also look into the impact of past research and the funds allocated. Can we account for the past research and the funds that are allocated? This will help us to avoid duplication of research. And so we felt that there was need to seriously looking at networking between activists, researchers, activists and researchers for the purpose of advocacy. These two need to work together. Activists alone cannot change the communities. Researchers alone cannot bring about change. So the two need to work hand in hand. And I think there are many examples, and this one is to that. And the issues that we think we should carry over with us: one, there is a need for the donor community to understand the needs of the beneficiaries. Take time to understand them, and therefore a big portion of time and money should be spent on needs assessment of the beneficiaries, and the program design should really pay attention to those needs. And emphasis should be put on research, advocacy, leading to action. There should be that interconnectedness between what is researched, advocacy, and this should all lead to action. And this should be tangible, measurable, and justifiable. And that will bring about, I think, a good relationship between the donors and the recipient communities. Thank you very much.
We have a second group who would like, I know there's been lots of questions coming out. I'm sure there's lots of questions coming out, but maybe something that we can pursue in the coffee break or in the next panel. So I'm going to invite another group to volunteer. And I'm going to pick on that group.
RECHERCHE, l'institution de justice transitionnelle. Voilà. Bon, comme dynamique, on a trouvé qu'il y a une déconnexion entre les formes de réparation proposées par les tribunaux et celles souhaitées par les victimes. Parce qu'on a dit que, par exemple, au Rwanda, après la crise de génocide, il n'y a pas eu de justice dans le sens d'une compensation individuelle. Les personnes qui ont été jugées ont plutôt, vu que les gouvernements n'avaient pas les moyens, les coupables aussi n'avaient pas les moyens pour dédommager les victimes. Donc, ils ont trouvé un moyen pour leur permettre de payer leur dette en société. Donc, les personnes qui ont perdu leurs biens et tout ça n'ont pas eu exactement ce qu'elles attendaient pour se sentir qu'il y a eu justice. Voilà. Maintenant, autre dynamique, on a une mise en œuvre des tests dans le cadre de la justice transitionnelle. Exemple, commission vérité, réconciliation et justice. Les tests font partie de leur mission. Les femmes ont pu exprimer ce qu'elles veulent comme réparation. Bon, il faut dire que, en ce qui concerne la commission vérité et réconciliation au Kenya, il a plus été question de dire, de faire, d'exprimer ce que la victime ressentait, mais il n'y a pas vraiment eu de suite, dans le sens punir les coupables. Voilà. Et puis, plus difficile au niveau de la justice nationale, reconnaissance récente des tests et peu de lien avec les droits des femmes. En ce qui concerne les défis, il y a peu de réparation des femmes pour aller devant la justice, de préparation des femmes pour aller devant la justice. Parce que les femmes, par exemple, qui ont subi certaines violences, doivent avoir le courage de parler devant des personnes, ce qu'elles ont ressenti dans leur chair. Ce n'est pas donné, ce n'est pas facile de s'exprimer devant un panel, plusieurs personnes pour exprimer ce qu'on a ressenti comme douleur et autres. Et puis il y a aussi le problème du fait que la cour est surtout composée d'hommes. Les femmes victimes de violences sexuelles vont venir s'exprimer devant des hommes. Est-ce que ces hommes-là peuvent comprendre exactement ce que la femme a ressenti? Surtout que ce sont des hommes comme eux qui ont commis les actes en question. Voilà. Et puis il y a le problème du fait que le sexe aussi est tabou chez nous en Afrique. Les personnes victimes de violences sexuelles ne sont pas vraiment à l'aise pour exprimer, parler de sexe devant un public ou des personnes. Voilà. Tout ce qui est attrait au sexe doit rester caché. Voilà. Donc, les rôles des tribunaux traditionnels perpétuent les stéréotypes envers les victimes. Parce que en la justice traditionnelle, il faut venir témoigner. Et puis après retourner dans la communauté. Bon, on ne sait pas trop comment ça va se passer avec le voisin. Par exemple, tu vas témoigner sur quelqu'un que tu connais, le voisin. Tu as peur peut-être des représailles après, en fait. Voilà. Maintenant, les tribunaux traditionnels sont composés de membres de la communauté des victimes. Ça aussi, c'est un défi qu'il faut relever. Voilà. Comme je disais aussi, que les femmes ont peur de témoigner, donc ça provoque la politique du silence. Et puis on revient sur la difficulté à exprimer témoigner par rapport aux représailles auxquelles elles pouvaient être soumises après le témoignage. Voilà. Il y a aussi la stigmatisation dans leur communauté. Une fois que tu vas aller témoigner, tu vas reconnaître publiquement que tu as été victime de violences sexuelles, par exemple. Après, dans la communauté, ça devient compliqué parce que ces personnes victimes sont rejetées par la communauté. Voilà. Donc tout le monde sait que tu as été violé, par exemple. Tu es rejeté après par la communauté. Il y a aussi les barrières géographiques. Pas de connaissance des membres du tribunal. On a dit que si tu devais quitter une localité pour aller témoigner dans une autre localité, tu serais un peu dépaysé. Parce que tu ne maîtrises pas trop contre qui tu témoignes. Peut-être que c'est le colonel ou bien le maire de la ville, ou je sais pas. Donc tu es un peu intimidé. Voilà, donc il y a des problèmes géographiques aussi qui se posent. Un autre problème aussi, la réinsertion des anciens miliciens ou militaires dans les forces policières. Donc ça impose le refus de témoigner par peur de rencontrer leur agresseur. Voilà, il y a des cas où, pendant la guerre, la partie gagnante essaie de réinsérer les miliciens dans l'armée légale ou dans la police ou la gendarmerie, par exemple. Et pendant la guerre, ces personnes qui ont commis des actes atroces se retrouvent du côté de la loi. La victime qui doit venir pour porter plainte ou témoigner se retrouve face à son agresseur qui porte le chapeau maintenant de la personne qui doit la protéger. Donc là, déjà, elle a peur de... Elle ne peut plus parler. Voilà. Donc ce sont un peu ce qu'on a pu relever dans notre groupe de travail. Je vous remercie.
Bravo.
Nous sommes du troisième groupe. Je pense que c'est le groupe exceptionnel qui a été représenté par les autres. Oui, je note le second homme qui est venu intervenir ici. Le troisième groupe va parler de l'accès limité des femmes, donc l'accès des femmes à la justice et aussi les obstacles aux femmes de pouvoir accéder à la justice. Il y a 10 personnes qui ont fait ce travail. 4 pays étaient représentés. Nous attendons de vous, des autres pays, de pouvoir ajouter leur conception par rapport à notre travail. L'accès des femmes à la justice, il y a eu deux enjeux. Les enjeux sont là, bien cités. On a parlé du fondamentalisme, qui est un enjeu, mais oui, je suis en train de parler de dynamique, bien sûr. Il y a des dynamiques qui sont là, qui empêchent ou qui provoquent que la femme arrive à accéder à la justice. Voilà, il y a le fondamentalisme, là il y a la culture, la religion, tout ce que vous connaissez là-dessus. Ceci, le fondamentalisme, c'est une des causes qui peuvent empêcher la femme. Parce qu'on a dit à propos des dynamiques, il y a faiblesse des dynamiques. Si on pouvait l'ajouter là, les dynamiques sont faibles. Donc il y a la volonté, il y a les textes qui ont été faits pour que les femmes accèdent à la justice, mais ces textes ne sont pas mis en œuvre. C'est juste des textes, c'est juste des documents qui sont là. Mais il n'y a pas la politique de mise en œuvre. Il n'y a pas les mesures d'accompagnement pour que cette histoire soit mise en application. Voilà, on s'était dit vraiment une précarité, une inconsistance de dynamique. Et par rapport aux enjeux, on a parlé du fondamentalisme. Là, il y a la religion, il y a la culture, il y a le système patriarcal. L'homme est presque un dieu. Oui. Il y a aussi l'environnement politique et le cadre légal. L'environnement politique, c'est juste tout ce que vous connaissez. La politique, elle est gérée comment? Ce n'est pas différent de ce qui a été dit comme le patriarcat là-bas. L'environnement politique n'est pas favorable parce que les femmes puissent accéder à la justice. Vous connaissez ceux qui gèrent la politique majoritairement. Il y a aussi la pauvreté. La pauvreté est le niveau de l'éducation, l'insuffisance de l'information et des formations. Ça aussi, ça empêche que la femme accède à la justice. Il y a le manque des pouvoirs et des styles de soins et de préparation psychologique. Je vais juste expliquer là. Il y a les lois qui sont là, mais on ne sait pas comment nourrir les bénéficiaires de ces lois pour qu'ils soient préparés à pouvoir s'accaparer des opportunités de pouvoir accéder à la justice. Là aussi. Ils sont là. Les femmes se disent qu'il a là et là, mais comment est-ce que nous allons accéder à cette loi? Ils se disent, ils ne sont pas préparés psychologiquement. Et les lois restent là-bas, et les opportunités sont là, mais les femmes n'arrivent pas à accéder à ces opportunités. Il y a aussi les femmes dans la justice et les institutions. Donc il y a faiblesse des femmes dans les institutions de justice. Quand vous allez trouver les gens qui gèrent l'armée, la police, vous allez trouver combien de femmes. Et quand elles sont là, elles occupent quelle position? Peut-être là au service des hommes, c'est ça. Il y a aussi la méconnaissance des procédures judiciaires. On se dit des fois, les lois sont là, mais on ne sait pas, on fait quoi. Donc, quand vous allez faire une procédure judiciaire, vous allez commencer où pour finir, à quel point. Des fois, on est dessus, je suis allé au tribunal, ils n'ont pas pu continuer avec le procédure, je m'arrête là. À ce moment-là, la justice reste telle qu'elle est. Donc, il fallait peut-être qu'on apprenne à pouvoir maîtriser les différentes procédures, les processus dans le système judiciaire. Il y a aussi, oui, j'ai parlé de mes connaissances ici, il y a aussi la lenteur. Je ne sais pas si je peux le dire ici. Loi lacrymée sur les viols. Il y a dans certains pays, par exemple en RDC, il y a une loi, bien sûr, dans tous les pays, il y a une loi, mais peut-être au Burundi, on a dit qu'il y a aussi une loi, mais cette loi n'est pas bien comprise, n'est pas bien interprétée de la même manière par tout le monde. Donc il y a un peu d'inconsistance dans la loi. Il y a aussi la non-exécution des jugements, pas de réparation. Donc il y a là le jugement, vous allez, mais il n'y a pas de jugement. Et il y a ceux-là qui disent que ça traîne, ça ne vient pas toujours. Donc les victimes sont là, n'ont jamais connu, n'ont jamais été indemnisées. Ils sont là, ils sont dessus. Est-ce qu'on doit toujours aller en justice pendant qu'il n'y a pas de réparation, pendant qu'il n'y a pas de jugement? Alors ça amène une certaine déception. Les femmes n'arrivent pas, on trouve que la justice est là, pas pour leur faveur. Il y a aussi insolvabilité et l'échéance des violeurs. Des fois, il y a une personne qui peut être, elle est violée par une personne juridiquement déchue, qui n'a pas quoi, la personne est déchue, ou la personne est insolvable. Par exemple, une personne violée par un fou ou un débile mental, on va s'attendre à quoi? Une personne qui a été violée par une personne qui ne peut pas payer l'indemnité, qui peut payer le prix de réparation. À ce moment-là, vous allez trouver bon. Tout ça, c'est un enjeu qui empêche la justice. Il y a aussi peu de représailles. On a peur des représailles, comme les autres l'ont dit. Si je fais ça, je veux recevoir ceci en retour. Alors, autant mieux me taire, autant mieux rester en silence. Voilà quelques enjeux. Il y a aussi la non-implication des hommes dans la lutte contre les violences sexuelles. Comme l'a exposé Mme Gilbert, elle a parlé même les hommes de justice qui sont là, qui disent ça c'est l'affaire des femmes. Donc pas beaucoup de personnes, pas beaucoup d'hommes qui sont impliqués dans la lutte contre les violences sexuelles. Par rapport aux obstacles, on a trouvé qu'il y a absence de financement. Quand il n'y a pas de financement, c'est difficile de mener les travaux de recherche. C'est difficile. Quand il n'y a pas de moyens. L'absence d'implication politique des autres. Quoi? C'est voilà. Des autorités. Ça veut dire quoi? Cette absence ici, l'implication des politiques, ça veut dire il y a même les autorités qui peuvent dire non. Ou sauf qu'ils peuvent dire nous avons les moyens, mais pas c'est pour d'autres priorités, pas pour la recherche. Il y a aussi, même les donateurs, ils peuvent se dire oui, nous avons les fonds, mais on ne peut pas donner les fonds pour les travaux de recherche. Pas de relation entre l'autorité locale et activistes et aussi des universités. Donc, des fois, il n'y a pas la coopération, le partenariat entre l'autorité locale, les activistes et les universités qui sont peut-être les centres de recherche. Oui. Il y a aussi manque d'intérêt des donateurs, je viens de le dire. Les donateurs ne sont pas intéressés de financer les projets de recherche, non. C'est juste autre chose. Et absence des bases de données. On ne sait pas où recourir pour avoir des databases, ça c'est aussi un problème. Insécurité, de pouvoir collecter les données. Quand il y a insécurité, il y a la colline X, on ne sait pas, il y a les mêmes si on a la volonté de faire des recherches, même si on a la volonté d'intervenir, c'est difficile. Il y a aussi banalisation, la banalisation des violences sexuelles, comme vous venez de le dire. On essaie de banaliser ça. On essaie de dire ça, c'est devenu une chanson de Marguerite de femme. Ils ne font que chanter, ils ne font que répéter la routine. On essaie de banaliser la problématique de violence sexuelle. Oui, on a aussi parlé de quelques priorités dans le problème prioritaire dans le domaine des recherches. On s'est dit, si au niveau du Soudan, ils ont voulu peut-être leur problème prioritaire dans le domaine des recherches serait au niveau de la réforme légale. Oui. Et au niveau des Zimbabwe, c'est donc l'implémentation ou la mise en œuvre des lois, des instruments juridiques en faveur de la femme. Et en RDC, une recherche approfondie sur l'insécurité dans le pays. Ça vient d'où? Quelles sont les motivations de cette insécurité? Et enfin, au Burundi, on s'est dit pourquoi il y a manque de lois qui répriment les auteurs de violences sexuelles. Il fallait faire une analyse là-bas et aussi ils ont insisté aussi sur la mise en œuvre. Voilà un peu, mais s'il y a d'autres pays qui peuvent ajouter leurs problèmes prioritaires, ils seront les bienvenus. Je dis un peu plus bon comme ça, je vous remercie.
And the last group is presenting. Through a terrible error, the group photo. So we want to make sure we have time to do a group photo before coffee break. So don't run away.
Yeah, in the morning,
As was selected to become the portrait recently, we highlighted some key answers to the questions of the dynamics relating to elections and political reforms. In the logic of dynamics, few things I can highlight from what was discussed was that the dynamics regarding elections and political elections are that reforms, texts, and protocols are voted, but not implemented at all when it comes to the practical implementation of what is concluded in those different reforms, texts, and protocols. The other dynamics was that women are not represented enough in political parties. And when there are independent activists, women, who emerge to participate in elections, they are hindered to participate in politics by in many ways. And the other dynamics is that all stakeholders are not involved in elections for a positive outcome that will benefit everyone and especially protect the human, the women's rights against sexual violences. By stakeholders, we understood that it is not only the leading political party which should have prevalence in elections, but also the civil society, the other representatives of the civil societies and local NGOs should all be involved and contribute effectively so that elections can be beneficiary to all and aim at protecting women's rights and protection against violence. Now, concerning obstacles hindering effective research in the domain, much more said, but we here highlight that there is a lack of comparative research whereby researchers can refer to what has already been achieved in relation to political elections and reforms. The other hindrance is that there is a lack of financial support, but there is also a low researchers network. There is a weak researchers network. But the other hindrance is also that there is a lack of access to information, especially reliable information, in relation to elections and political reforms. Now, I might finish by what future research focus should be undertaken. Two topics were of great interest here. In future research, we should look forward to understanding more the issue of sexual violences within legally established election committees. Because here we identified that even women who are promised political positions are granted those positions in exchange to sexual intercourses. And this issue is not well researched upon. Hence, further research focus will be undertaken to study it more carefully. And the other issue was, how can all stakeholders be involved in effective elections to promote women and protect their rights and protect them against gender-based violences, such as the overall presentation of what we studied in our group. Thank you.